Anyone walking casually among the historic ships and monuments garden at the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park might or might not notice this smaller memorial like a gravestone with a picture of this warship, a tribute to officers and sailors who served on the USS Frank E Evans destroyer, with the back of it noting June 3rd, 1969, as some gave all. Buffalo Naval Park Museum curator Shane Stevenson.
We will get questions about it. They'll say, oh, is this was the ship here in Buffalo? Or they don't really know the story.
A 19-year-old U.S. Navy seaman named Bill Tebow lived that story, serving then in 1969 as a Navy cook on board the Evans, sleeping in his bunk towards the back of the ship on that fateful night.
I was scheduled to get up and go into the galley and start baking bread about 4 o'clock in the morning. So if it would have happened while I was in the galley, I wouldn't be here right now.
At about 3 a.m. on a very dark night in the South China Sea, it happened, as the Frank E Evans was part of a Joint Fleet anti-submarine warfare training exercise program with the Australian ally ships. As depicted in this painting of the massive collision, the Evans crossed right into the path of this much larger ship, the Royal Australian Navy's HMAS Melbourne aircraft carrier, designated Vessel 21, with this massive bow seen here underway, hitting midships on the smaller Evans.
We got split right in half, and the front half just upended and went right down in, like I said, about 3 minutes.
Even the tonnage is just so unbelievably different. The momentum, it just severed it at about 95 feet from the bow.
The suddenly sinking bow section or front half of the Evans took with it the lives of these 74 U.S. sailors, including 21-year-old radar operator Terry Lee Henderson from Westfield, Chautauqua County, whose name is on that Buffalo memorial, along with 2 other sailors from New York City. But with a strange twist of fate, that now sliced off back half or aft section of the Evans stayed upright as jolted sailors closed watertight compartment hatches, according to Stevenson. The
aft section still floats, so it shows that watertight integrity even after a collision and a severing like that, and it stayed afloat. They expected it to sink.
An Australian sailor who was on board the also damaged Melbourne ship and who visited Buffalo in 2016 recalls.
I climbed straight up to try and find out what was going on, and when I got to the starboard side of the Melbourne, the back end of the ship had come around and it was right there, and you could almost reach out and touch it.
The Australian sailors got right to work immediately tying up the aft section to the Melbourne, and all of that together saved us.
So what happened to cause that fatal collision under military blackout sailing conditions?
The Frank E Evans was told to move to a different station in the formation, and they misread where they actually were. Now, the officer of the deck, the lieutenants, the captain was in bed sleeping, and they, again, miscalculated where they were on station, and that's one of the reasons behind the collision.
There were court-martials for some of the U.S. Navy officers, including the commander of the destroyer ship Evans, along with U.S.-Australian diplomatic friction, but also some unusual tragic circumstances and naval park connections. First, it turns out the HMAS Melbourne, that Australian aircraft carrier, under a different commander, had collided 5 years before, in 1964, with the Australian destroyer HMAS Voyager, similar to the Evans, and also cut that ship in half as it later sunk with a loss of 82 Australian sailors. But back to the later 1969 Frank E Evans tragic collision. Among those 74 sailors killed, 3 brothers from a Midwest family, just as USS the Sullivans at the Naval Park was named for 5 Sullivan brothers from the Midwest, killed in the sinking of their World War II ship.
It's an amazing coincidence. There were 3 brothers, Gary, Greg, and Kelly Joe Sage from Nebraska, and they all perished on that June night in 1969.